Welcome to the first lesson of this New Testament Greek course. This course will improve the accuracy and depth of your understanding of the Bible. My name is McKerras. I've been involved in Bible translation in the Pacific region over the last 35 years. I was a team member in the translation of the Urupif New Testament of Vanuatu, and since then I have translated I've worked as a translation consultant, checking translations of the Bible in 22 other languages. There are significant advantages of studying the New Testament in Greek that make it well worthwhile the time it takes. Every translation, no matter who the translators were, no matter what translation theory they were following, is like a reproduction of an original masterpiece, so faithful only to so many pixels. That makes it unsuitable for close study. But the Greek you can study as closely as you like. Or to use another analogy, a translation is like a black and white reproduction of a full color original. So today, we are going to study the New Testament in high resolution and in full color. This class assumes no prior knowledge of Greek, yet we get straight into the Greek New Testament. Is this a miracle or a magic trick? Neither. You'll see how it works in just a minute. We have no textbook except the Greek New Testament. So one thing that helps us is we're not going to learn a lot of tables or vocabulary lists, or we're not going to do a lot of made-up exercises or learn unnecessary details like the names of all the Greek letters. We start straight into the Greek New Testament, and everything we need to know, we learn it as it becomes relevant. We pick it up in its context. Our method is based on language learning principles that are actually quite widely used today by practical people wanting to gain practical knowledge of languages for use. Somewhat surprisingly, perhaps, they haven't been applied yet to learning New Testament Greek, to my knowledge. Giving you a piece of A4 paper, so anyone who's watching this on the internet, you'll need to get yourself a piece of paper like this with these Greek words on it, maybe from some Bible program, or else copy them onto the top of a piece of A4 paper. These are the words we're going to be studying in our first lesson today. But first I'm just going to show you how we're going to fold our piece of paper to guide the writing that we'll do on it. Okay, so here is an A4 sheet, and on top of it are written the Greek words Hotheos agape estin, and these small little bit after it gives you the reference, 1 John chapter 4 verse 8b, and that means that it's the second part of verse 8, it's not the whole verse. So we're going to write on this sheet our study notes, but before we do that, we're going to fold the paper to guide our writing. So first thing is we turn the sheet over like that to the blank side up, and then we fold it carefully from the bottom to the top like that. Then we open it out again, and we do two more folds, one from the bottom to the center like that, and one from the top to the center like that. So now when we open it out right side up, we see that we have three areas in which we're going to write our notes. In the first of these areas, we will write a letter by letter translation of these Greek letters into English letters. On the next area, we will write a word by word translation of the Greek into English. And on the final area, we will write a proper translation into English of those words. And the idea is that when you take this home, you can have your sheet like this and just look at the Greek. Try to remember what it said, and if you need to refresh your memory, you can unfold the paper bit by bit to see the notes that you wrote. And then an hour or two after that, you can come to this again, look at it again, and again try to remember what it said. Okay, so let's begin our lesson and what we're going to write. So, as we go through, I'll be asking some questions. I won't just be putting the answers down. And so if anybody watching this filmed, you might want to pause the film and try to do it yourself, or give the answer before I do. So we start. The first letter here, does it look like a letter that we already know? Bearing in mind that our own English alphabet descends from the Greek alphabet, so quite a few of the letters are the same or very similar to Greek letters. Others of the letters, you'll be familiar with them if you've done any mathematics or science. And some of you may know the names of the letters, but we don't need to worry about the names of the letters for our purposes, just their sounds. So this first letter here, what do you think that letter might be? Well, yes, it looks like an O, and it is an O. So on this first area here, where we are writing our letter by letter translation of the Greek, we write the English letter O. Now the second thing to note is it has a little quote mark here, apostrophe, that slopes inwards, and that tells us that there is an H in front of it. So we write down H like that. You see there are various marks above these other letters. The apostrophe bending this way means no H. So these third and fourth word here, they have no H. This other mark here we don't need to worry about for our purposes. So that first word says, in English letters and in English pronunciation, it says ha. Just a word about the pronunciation of our English vowels. English vowels often are not pure. For example, we would say O. In English we say O. That's an O. But actually when you listen to it carefully, that's not a pure vowel. O. O. We're actually saying O. But these Greek vowels, they're pure vowels. So don't say ho, ho, but say ha, ha. This word is ha. Okay, now the second word, this letter, if you know what this letter is, you can write it on your sheet. It's a TH. That's a single sound, but in English we write it with two letters. In Greek it's just written with one letter. In English we write it with two letters. Th. Okay, the next letter. Do you recognize that letter, or do you know what that letter is, or could you guess what that letter is? Well, it's an E. An E. Third letter, again, it's an O, O. And the final letter looks like an S, and it is an S. So the word is theos, theos. So far it says ha, theos. Coming now to the third word and the first letter. If you recognize that, or if you want to make a guess, you can write it on your sheet of paper. It's an A. The next letter, if you know that from mathematics or from prior knowledge, you can write that down. It's in fact a G, a G. Third letter, A again. Fourth letter is a Greek P. Fifth letter is another E. This one, you notice that Greek has two E's. This one and this one are both E's. This one is a long E, so sometimes we write a little mark over top of it to indicate that it's a long E. So this word is pronounced agape. Agape. Coming now to the fourth word. The first letter you should recognize. We've had it already. Yes, it's an E. The next letter is a new letter. In fact, it's not a new letter, it's a different form of S. Again, some of you will be familiar with it from mathematics. In Greek, the letter S is written two different ways. When it's at the end of a word, it's written like that, which looks a bit more like our English S. But when it's not at the end of a word, it's written like that. But in both cases in English, we just write S. Next letter. Yes, it's a T. Next letter looks like an I, and it is an I. And again, don't worry about the little mark here. We don't need to worry about that. And the last letter, this is deceptive. It looks like a V, but it's actually an N. So this last word says estin. Estin. So here we have it. Ha theos agape estin. And if you become familiar with these Greek letters, you can read it straight off the Greek without needing to look at the English letters. Now we come to the third section of our study, which is where we are going to write a word-by-word translation of the Greek. Up here, we did a letter-by-letter translation. Here we're going to do a word-by-word translation, and here we're going to do a proper translation into English. So the first word is ha. Again, write that down in English here if you know what that Greek word means. It means the. The next word is theos. Again, write that down if you know what it is. It's God. If you haven't learnt the Greek before, it will still be familiar with you perhaps from borrowed words that we have in English. For example, theology, the study of God. But don't pronounce this E in an English way, theos. Pronounce it more in a Greek way, which is similar actually to Italian, A, E, or U. A. So this is eos, eos, ha theos, the God. Now we come to the third word, agape. Write that down if you know what it means. Yes, it means love. Agape, love. And the final word, again, write it down here if you know what it means. It means is. Those of you familiar with other European languages, for example, French and German, their form is very similar to this. In fact, the English word is related as well, although you can see it's changed so much that really only the S is left. But in French, the word is E-S-T, and in German it's I-S-T. So they're all actually cousin words because the European languages are interrelated. So there we have it. Our letter-by-letter translation and our word-by-word translation says, the God love is. Now, on this bottom line down here, we're going to write this in a proper English translation. So again, pause for a minute if you want to try writing that in a proper English translation. And what we write is God is love. So there we have it. Greek letters, English word for word, and English freer translation. I prefer to call it a proper translation. That's a proper translation. So now, as I said, you can take this home and fold it up. And when you get home, just look at this and try to remember. First, try to remember how to say it. Hotheos, agape, estin. And then next, try to remember what the different words meant, and then what the proper translation is. And if you can't remember, you can jog your memory by folding it out to however far you need to have it folded out. Okay, hotheos, agape, estin. Now, just a question for you to think about. Is this a literal statement? God is love. Is it literal? In other words, is it saying God equals love? God is nothing more and nothing less. God is exactly that. If you want to think about it, you might want to pause for a minute. No, I think we would agree it's not a literal statement, because obviously God is a lot more than just love. So my next question for you is, how would you say it in plain English then? In plain, more literal English? Again, you can stop if you want to think about it. And I think we would probably say something like, God's nature is to love. It is God's nature to love, or perhaps God is characterized by love. Or maybe you can think of another way to say it. And I should add here that there is another little twist to understanding this verse, and we'll consider that in a subsequent lesson. However, if this lesson is all you do, if you learn no other Greek, remember this. Stick it up on the wall in your thinking room and think about it. Let it soak into your brain. Let it seep into your heart. Hotheos, agape, estin. And next lesson, we'll tackle another statement like this one. You can contact me through my blog, logosword.wordpress.com.